Hey everyone, I'm Lee Jen, along with my co-host Nathan Biches, and welcome to Means of Creation, a show where we are deep diving into the passion economy and the future of work. This podcast is brought to you by the Means of Creation newsletter, which you can find at every.to. Every week, we are breaking down the news related to creators and the creator economy and all of the companies in the creator economy and parsing all of the news events that happened that week. This week, we break down the news about Clubhouse's new creator monetization tools, as well as the reported numbers of declining daily active users. But that brings me to today's episode. A few weeks ago, Linktree, which is a link in bio platform that serves as the de facto landing page for 12 million creators, just announced a $45 million Series B round of financing led by Index and Coatue. Linktree is used by everyone from celebrities like Selena Gomez to Katy Perry to Chrissy Teigen to large organizations and brands like Shopify, TikTok, Facebook, and Red Bull. In September of last year, it was reported that 28,000 new creators were signing up every day to use Linktree. Today, we're joined by Linktree CEO Alex Zaccaria to unpack their most recent pitch to investors, where and how the company fits into the creator economy's future, and much more. Let's get straight into it. Thanks so much, Alex, for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So a few weeks ago, you announced this $45 million fundraise, which is quite sizable. And I think that pretty much quickly followed from the Series A that you had raised maybe last fall, or it wasn't even a year ago. So I'm curious, can you just give us the backstory on how that round came together, and also what was the pitch and the story that convinced them that they needed to co-lead the round?
Yes, absolutely. So we did our Series A in October last year after being bootstrapped for a couple of years, really building a product-first company and growing super organically, and decided at that time that it was time for us to really add fuel to the fire, obviously bring on some capital, but mostly really focused on bringing on the right team to help us see around corners and get the right people around the table to help us grow. And that was really no different for the Series B. We were very fortunate. They were both incredibly competitive rounds, that we had a lot of really great interest and a really fast growing company, and fast growing products. So we took the time to really pick the right investors that were going to join us along this journey and be able to help us scale Linktree to where it can be. So we did a series in October, and then it was pretty shortly after we were already having the conversations with Index and Coatue and a bunch of others around wanting to preempt the next round and run with the next round. Obviously very privileged and excited, and it's a great place to be in. We were definitely wanting to, after spending a little bit of time raising, wanting to really get back to the product and continue building. And so, we wrapped things up pretty quickly, and we were just incredibly excited to have Dan Rose with his amazing experience at Amazon and Facebook, and Matt Mazzio with his great background in talent and building products from Coatue, and then Danny Reimer at Index and the team there. They are all just the exact right people we're looking for to build to add into this round, along with the previous investors inside and Airtree.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was wondering if you can tell us what you think the investment thesis for them was. I know that you're on the founder side, you're not on the investor side, but if you were putting yourselves into their shoes and thinking through, okay, what led them to be intrigued enough to want to invest in this business, what do you think were those leading reasons for the investment thesis?
Yeah, so Linktree, aside from its great growth rate at the moment, so it's a move past the 28,000 now, it's about 34,000 a day now. And what we're really trying to do around our passions and our values right now of democratizing the internet and democratizing your digital presence and enabling anyone to have your own place on the internet. That obviously speaks to a big chunk of our users that generally on the lower end of the digital comprehension spectrum, where they're really utilizing Linktree to be able to have a digital presence, and that really humbles us and really excites us that we're able to do that for people. And then the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where we've got users working on behalf of the biggest brands and celebrities and influencers in the world and building functionality for them. And across the board, where we're really seeing Linktree evolve well beyond where we started, being a tool to solve a problem, which was the link in bio problem, being able to link out of social media in an effective way from a marketing perspective. It's really evolved well beyond that, much more into a platform that enables the progression from where you find your audience through to how you monetize them, and a place that is representative of yourself. It's really a place of self-expression And we're looking at it really as this idea of the future of social identity, where it's your self-expression, absolutely everything about you, everything that's most recent and relevant to you, and the actions that you actually want your audience to take. And I think for our investors, they were really recognizing the opportunity of where Linktree is going in terms of the ability to be able to unify everyone's digital presence and unify your entire digital and social identity into one place in a really simple, effective, clutter-free, frictionless environment. And I know obviously codes who definitely see things that way. Dan Rose's experience back at Facebook, where, obviously building that kind of thing for a very long time and recognizing that now really the only way to be able to do that is being in a platform agnostic environment, not in a proprietary company. And that kind of word identity can be a little bit of like a bit of a dirty word, and it's not about your social security number and privacy, and those kind of things. It's about your self-expression and being able to show all sides of you as a creator, as an individual, as a brand, as a business, all in one place in a really effective way, and be able to drive conversion, enabling really simple conversion. And so, yeah, the future is really exciting.
I think the phrase you used somewhere, I forget what it was, a quote in a story or in the blog post you wrote announcing the Series B, but it's deceptively simple. The product is deceptively simple. And it seems like if you're like a young engineer who wants to create something cool, maybe you could build something like Linktree in a week or something like that. And of course, you couldn't really replicate everything that Linktree has to offer functionality wise. But if you just take the basic, you can have a background color and then a row of buttons or whatever, and people can choose what they want their buttons to link out to. And there's some basic analytics. Like, that is the kind of thing that's easy to build pretty quickly. But yet Linktree still has this huge market share, and there are competitors that are like pretty sophisticated in the market. I'm curious, why is it just brand recognition? I see the famous people using, and plus my friends using Linktree, and so of course that's where I'm going to start it. Or what are the other kind of like reasons why people may choose to use Linktree rather than a competitive service?
Yeah, totally. Look, it's a fascinating conundrum for us because one of our core pillars is simplicity. We build everything to be as simple as possible, and obviously that simplicity means that there's like you said, lots of engineers, lots of companies thinking it's simple and essentially cloning it entirely. And that to us is actually flattering. We look at it and go, okay, we've made it look that simple, and it does look that simple and feel that simple, and that's a great thing, and that's what we've been trying to achieve. But we know how actually complex it is. Building simple things is actually the most complicated. To be able to enable that kind of simplicity and intuitive UI, and how contextual everything is, and how we really focus on not putting our users through this really high cognitive load, how it's really simple to both log on and get going, but also continue to evolve your Linktree, evolve the way it looks and feels and converts. And so for us, we created this category, nothing existed when we started it, and it was obviously less simple than building this category and getting users and visitors and the audience and the internet to accept this simple list of links and understand the reason why it's valuable was the first part of it. And now as we're reaching that kind of critical mass, obviously competitors are going to come along. For us, we're continuing to evolve the product. It's no longer this link in bio tool, which where a lot of competitors are sitting. And we're very focused. We've always been incredibly focused, like I said, on simplicity, but equally on the visitor and on the user. The UI is hyper focused on conversion. It's about driving simplicity. It's about driving clutter-free, frictionless environment for converting. And that's bringing all our digital agency experience, digital hyper focus on like performance marketing, conversion experience in. And for us, it's not about jamming all this functionality and just having this featureitis and just giving heaps of features. It's about picking the right ones and building them in a way that's actually going to drive conversion and not affect results. It's about results at the end of the day for users, where they can actually get their audience to where they want to get them to in a way that's fast and simple for them and in less clicks. And we see that sometimes users will want something to work differently, but we try to guide our users and have some guardrails around them having control over their branding and agency over their identity and their presence, while still enabling their profile to be hyper-focused on conversion and making sure that it matches everything we need to from an accessibility perspective, SEO perspective, the way we guide users and their eyes exactly towards where we need to get them to. We build a lot of research into the way we're affecting results. And I think, that's definitely the very tricky part, when you can just obviously clone exactly what our UI looks like, But when you're not really looking into the exact reasons and the research behind and how we're thinking about every single feature and product and the way we look at the UI, it's obviously very different.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how, in some sense, I think Linktree is almost in a better position to inform the creator as to what should be on their link in bio and on their Linktree page than the creator does. We think of creators as people who have like extreme agency over their digital presence. They can craft it however they want to. And so they may be tempted to put things on their page that in a certain order, have it look a certain way. But actually, you guys are able to look across the entire universe of pages and say, actually, this is the format in which it will convert the best. If you want your results to be this, then you should do this. And it's almost like being a manager at scale and having a more data-driven approach to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and for us, like we said, it's about when we talk about users having their agency over their identity, it's also about what they want their audience to know about them, not what an algorithm wants their audience to know. It thinks they want their audience to know about them, right? You can Google Selena Gomez and you'll find her birth weight and her height, but you can't find immediately what she cares about right now, most recently, most relevantly. And you look at her link tree and it's this curated list of links by her in priority order of what she cares about. And that, to us, is really the self-expression of what you care about most recently and relevantly. And I think when we're talking about that kind of, we'll never do anything around automatically or just like changing the way your link tree looks just to aid conversion, but we will enable our users to learn from it. Like I mentioned earlier, some of our more democratized users that are really utilizing Linktree to have a digital presence, they may not be trained necessarily in digital and not necessarily know what click-through rate is, or if they do, how to really utilize it to optimize their conversion and how to optimize their monetization. And that's what we really intend on enabling our users to understand more and give them the tips in the right places contextually to help them put the right links, put them in the right order, link them to the right places. Again, we're all about conversion. We're building a lot of functionality that enables you to actually take that action in your link tree. So you click a button and it'll show a video, or our recent launch of commerce links where you can make a donation or actually make requests inside Linktree. But for us, it's not about keeping people in Linktree. Again, it's about getting people to where they want to go, getting audience to where you want to get them to as quickly as possible. And if driving monetization inside Linktree is what you need them to do, or driving them to watch a video really quickly inside Linktree is what you need them to do, and our data shows that will enable conversion better, then do that. If you need to get them over to YouTube because you need to make the most of their monetization, then do that also. And we encourage either way, whatever's best for our user.
Totally. The thing you mentioned about like the hypothetical where you Google someone like Selena Gomez and it's so easy to find out like, okay, like Wikipedia information or whatever, stuff like height and weight, date of birth, whatever. But it's interesting how for a lot of people, when you Google them, if they're not celebrities, you might get their LinkedIn, you might get their Facebook account, something like that. Are you seeing SEO as a potential channel for Linktree, or do you measure like how much is coming from that? Because it's not just necessarily LinkedIn bio. It could also be LinkedIn search result, basically.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're talking about when we're saying, Linktree's really evolved outside of a LinkedIn bio. We see Linktree really is your jumping off point. It's no longer needing to be from a LinkedIn bio. We're recognizing that Linktree as a platform and this category that we created is really evolving well beyond this kind of idea of being able to link out a LinkedIn bio. The category's growing into the website space. We're seeing a huge amount of brands no longer needing a website, this big brand immersive website, just to be able to host their presence. We've made it completely acceptable now for brands to have this really simple, clutter-free list of links as a link tree, and especially from a campaign perspective, no longer spending millions of dollars building these epic brand websites where you can have a that's designed specifically for conversion and get people to where you need to get to out of wherever you're linking them to, linking them from, and wherever your audience lives. And that may not be social. We're seeing a huge amount of traffic come from direct, just because and especially from return traffic to profiles, we're seeing direct. So someone will search Jamie Oliver, find the latest recipe, remember that recipe tree, or they'll just remember that it's a link tree and go directly to it. We also see search actually and SEO being quite significant. In many cases, the link tree shows above the actual person's own website. Our domain reputation score is something like 91, 92, and for reference, Wikipedia is 95. So we know that we drive a lot of results. Again, our profiles are very built with SEO in mind and driving ultimate traffic conversion in mind. And there's kind of this myth out there that you need traffic to go directly to your website to improve SEO, whereas actually the fact is getting links from Linktree as a domain, which has a very high domain reputation score, to your website is actually far better for your website's SEO as well. And so we really try to educate our users in this kind of digital methodology to still link to their website if they have a website. You actually don't need a website. You can do everything you need to do. And especially in an environment right now where platforms that host content incentivize you to host their content on that platform, right? And so it's not about having this big brand immersive website. It's about having a Linktree, something like a Linktree that enables you to just get your audience to wherever you're hosting that content and wherever you're able to monetize that content.
Alex, can you give us a quick run through of just like the high level latest metrics that have been announced publicly for the company in terms of creators, pages, audience, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so it's between 35,000 signups a day, just nearing 13 million, over 4 million of those users were in the last 3 months. I haven't announced this publicly yet. I can say it here though, so we are now at 800 million unique visitors a month on profiles.
Amazing.
So it's significant. We're nearing in on the billion, and yeah, growing really quickly in that way. And that for us is a really big part of our brand presence and the way we think about equally our visitors and our users on profiles, and how we make sure that those 800 million visitors are having the best possible experience and actually achieving what they came to Linktree for. And so we focus a lot on that.
Got it. I want to talk a little bit about the arc of social platforms and the internet and our identity on the internet. So in some sense, it's really interesting that Dan Rose, who was at Facebook for a long time, is now an investor in Linktree, because everything that you said about Linktree being the home of all of your links across the internet, all of the different properties that you might want people to see, like Facebook wanted to be that. Facebook was supposed to be your canonical identity online and be a reflection of who you were and what you stood for, or if you were a company, like all of the information related to your company. And obviously there's been so much fragmentation in social platforms since that vision of Facebook. And now you not only have a Facebook profile, you have LinkedIn, Twitter, Snap, TikTok, new ones every day. There's new creator monetization tools being announced every single day, tons of startups building in this space. And so the trend is towards more fragmentation. And it's interesting that Linktree, the existence of Linktree, I think it's like a really interesting statement on the state of how fragmented our identity is online. So I would love to hear your thoughts on like, where is that going? Does it get worse from here? Are we going to be siloing our information on various different platforms more and more? And eventually will our link trees look like 10-page Word documents of links where we have a bit of our profiles here and there across hundreds of different siloed platforms and walled gardens? Where does this all go?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting observation. I think actually Dan Rose was talking about this yesterday on a Clubhouse chat we were having, and he was very much talking about Facebook. Obviously, was that for a while, and they were building this timeline where you had everything about your entire life on there,
right?
And that was a great idea, but actually, what they ended up recognizing that wasn't the only place people shared. People ended up sharing on Instagram and a few other places, and also that people didn't necessarily care about history of others. They care about what they're doing right now. And that's really where Linktree comes in, where we're not talking about historically all their different platforms and what they're doing. It's what they're doing right now, what you need your audience to take action on. When we started Linktree, we recognized that the agency we're running at the time was specialized in music and entertainment, looking after heaps of festivals and record labels and artists, and recognize that artists as creators didn't have real complete agency over how they represented themselves. They usually had to just link to one particular monetization method. They might link to their streaming, they might link to their record, to their touring, or they might link to their merch or to their video, and they could only really do it one at a time. And each of them had a different stakeholder, like each of those revenue streams had a different stakeholder for them. So they had their manager looking after their merch, and their record label caring about their streaming, and their touring agent caring about their touring. And so we consistently had this kind of fight over what links we should be sharing. And that was really fragmented. It was kind of this like fragmented revenue streams for a creator at that time. It's really why we built Linktree, to be able to solve that problem. And what's ended up evolving from there is actually just the entire internet has become really fragmented, and why we've continued to evolve into many other verticals and categories, because we're seeing this explosion of social platforms. We're seeing users and people really start to understand the differences in the platforms and what they're built for, and being very comfortable with utilizing that platform for what it is. It's Twitter for conversation, it's Instagram for sharing pretty things, and it's Clubhouse for sharing knowledge, and going all in on particular areas and really just creating content for that particular vertical. And obviously, as we see younger generations come through and that type of content change and the way they use different platforms. And so it's no longer this kind of one monolithic social media platform where you share everything. Everyone's really comfortable sharing across different platforms. So I think we'll continue to see that evolve. I do think that there is a limit to what the human mind can handle, and I don't think we're going to see 15, 20, 30 social media platforms. But obviously, and those that actually really provide value within a particular content space and within a particular demographic or whatever it might be, will be the ones that survive. And again, Linktree is really built to unify your entire digital presence in that way. And the reason why we continue to build functionality that makes it really easy to do that. So we'll definitely continue to see this fragmentation, and Linktree will always be there to help you unify that in the simplest possible way, in the most powerful way possible. It will definitely encourage and educate our users not to have 100 links on your Linktree, but we are definitely building functionality and doing research around how we can continue to reduce that cognitive load, as there actually are many more places that our users need to share. So how do we help categorize links? How do we help detect what the visitor's actually there for and help surface that to them more quickly? Yeah, those kinds of things. It's definitely interesting times.
How much do you think the growth of Linktree has been propelled by the fact that these social media platforms where people are building their audiences and building a following, they're distinct from the properties that you want to funnel your audience to when you start thinking about monetization and how do I actually build a source of income for myself and make this content creation thing sustainable financially? Like, how much of the need for Linktree is driven by bridging that gap between this is where my audience is and it's a different place than where I monetize my audience? And I guess my follow-up question from that is, like, when they start to become the same place, like when Twitter starts introducing super follow and review, when Clubhouse starts introducing monetization, etc., does the need for a link in bio tool then start to diminish?
I wouldn't say it's a big part of the reason for growing. I think it's a big part of the reason for users becoming more comfortable and becoming better at best practice in terms of consistently updating their links and linking to the right places and linking to the different places. And also, we've seen a huge increase in the amount of unique places that a user installs their Linktree. So on average, we see around 3.5 different locations that a user installs their Linktree. So maybe Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat, Facebook, Pinterest, on their business cards, in their resume, in their email signature. And so it's really continuing to be about that unification. And even as these platforms continue to build in monetization to their platforms, a creator's entire audience isn't going to be on that one platform. And so the ability to be able to link to the other areas that you can monetize that audience will continue to be more important. So you might still have a newsletter on Substack that you need people to subscribe to, and you might also be streaming on Twitch where you get people to subscribe and you make money, but you still want to be able to cross-pollinate that audience and be able to supplement that income and be able to connect them together. So I think that a user's identity is not just monolithic. It's not just about, if they're a gamer, it's not just on Twitch. They're still going to have other platforms. They're still going to have they're going to have their Discord as well as their Twitch, as well as their Instagram and their Twitter, and really wanting, and even if it's not monetizing on those other platforms, it's still a representation of them, who they are. And the ability to be able to streamline that and not have to choose in one place the only other place you're going to link them to, but link them to a place where you're able to give the visitor agency over where they want to get to, and also help drive them to where you need to get them to. So continuing to really streamline the progression of user flows on the internet through to where users actually need them to get to is what we're about. And I think that will continue to evolve, even as I think it's really amazing that platforms are enabling the passion economy in that way. And I think obviously Patreon doing amazingly that kind of functionality really spurring on every other platform to build membership and build transactions. I think the simpler we make it for creators to be able to drive revenue for themselves, the closer we get to this idea where creators can just, they're recognized as just, right up there with every other profession, and they're continuing to make a living for themselves by actually monetizing their passion. I think that's awesome.
Totally. I think it makes total sense. Even if you primarily make your money and have most of your audience on, say, Twitch, you still are going to have a bio on Twitch that you want to point people to your Twitter or whatever else. One thing that is interesting to me about that is there's, like, with the focus on conversion, it makes sense. You want to direct people to a certain place. And so when you have people's attention because they're looking at your profile and they're clicking on the link in your bio, there's like specific places you can pull them. But also, those people might be interested to hear from you more proactively. And so one of the links in my bio might be like an email list. But that also feels like the kind of thing that, because email is this sort of open system, that Linktree would be in a really good position to do, where I could do like a simple version of it's not for Substack, where it's like for writers who like are trying to make a living with their writing. It's just for anyone who wants to say, hey, if you're interested in, like you said earlier, like what's on my mind, what's most interesting to me lately, it could be like the email list tool for everyone rather than just for people who like want to be serious writers or whatever else. Is that something you do? Is that something you might do? It feels like a good extension to me.
Every time I talk to you, Nathan, you're pretty spot on with where we're thinking. I think it's definitely a consideration. However, the power of Linktree comes from doing one thing and doing one thing very well and maintaining the simplicity. And we're really platform agnostic, and we want to see every platform around the creator economy thrive. And so we won't, even as we've been thinking, for example, around our social commerce functionality, we know there's many other platforms in the creator economy that enable similar functionality, and we actually, rather than being conflicting and trying to compete in those areas, wanting our users, again, if they're using a platform that does that for them already, encouraging them to still be able to use that link off. But if using the Linktree version of the functionality enables better conversion, easier revenue for them, then they can use that as well. When we think about that, obviously with every platform being a unification tool where you're linking to every platform, we want to make sure that we're continuing to link to every other platform. So we think more heavily around the idea of having a really deep integration to MailChimp or ConvertKit or those kind of platforms and make that really easy. But we definitely have some ideas around the way to keep a user's audience updated about their links. And like you said, I wish I could write well enough that I could have a Substack. I just love the idea of being able to like have my thoughts that way, but I could never ever, I get distracted after writing 20 words. But the idea of the things that I would share on my Linktree and having these kind of short, sharp bursts of informing my audience about something that I care about is definitely something interesting to us.
Totally. It relates to another thing that other platforms do, but I think you're thinking about doing. I think I saw some press that maybe commerce is a thing. So like obviously Shopify exists in Gumroad, and there's ways to sell things on the internet. I'm curious how y'all think about native commerce, like within Linktree versus linking to another platform where the transaction might occur.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the reason why we can raise such a big round is really for us to go all in on building the future of social commerce. And that doesn't necessarily mean it all happening inside your Linktree. It definitely involves a lot of integration with other platforms. We know that a lot of our users use Shopify, and that's awesome. And we want to enhance that functionality. We want to enable you to be able to to be able to sell directly inside your Linktree. Again, if we can nail the idea of a checkout flow in a really high converting way, then we'll do it. If we can't, we'll continue to drive off to another platform. It's about making sure that it's always the best possible experience for a visitor and for a user, not just about trying to keep people on our platform. And that's how we think about, and a lot of the research we're doing now in design around you'll be able to show products, you'll be able to sell products inside your Linktree, but you'll also be able to drive off to the right place and convert. We're working directly with a lot of platforms in building that kind of functionality at the moment. We know that having said that, there's a lot of users that use Shopify, but we know that there's a lot of our users, again, talking about this democratized user, that platforms like that can still be quite overwhelming. We know there's millions of our users that are using Linktree because of its simplicity and being able to get online really easily. And having an entire e-commerce store to build and manage and connected domains and do all that kind of work, or having an entire brand immersive website and having to build templates and do all that kind of thing is still overwhelming. And so we really want to build functionality around enabling the sales of products in a really simple way. and still being powered by really powerful backend, like utilizing those platforms. But how can we make it simple? So yeah, lots to come there for sure. We've already launched some functionality around tip jar, support me type links where you can get tips through selected denominations and request links, so you can have your audience purchase or make requests around whatever your passion might be, making candles, making bracelets, unlocking content, etc. And the adoption of that has been incredible. And for us to really see our place being so mainstream. Passion economy, creator economy is a chunk of what we do. But as you mentioned earlier, these celebrities, these massive brands that use Linktree, it's not just the only thing that Linktree does. It's a really massive, our diversification across all verticals is quite significant. And so we really see our place in the passion economy continuing to evolve the passion economy into consumers and everyone outside of the passion economy. So we really want to make sure that everyone, no matter what, if you don't know what the passion economy is, you don't know what these people are doing, that you feel safe when you land on a Linktree to transact with this person. And that's what we really, see our place being in enhancing the passion economy.
Very interesting. I want to move us from talking about the future to talking about the past a little bit. Linktree has this really interesting origin story, and it's pretty unique among startups that we typically talk about in Silicon Valley, in the sense that you guys were bootstrapped for a long time. And last fall, you decided to raise venture funding, and it was your first round of venture funding. Curious what led to that. There's oftentimes a chasm between people who love being bootstrapped and talk about being bootstrapped and are very proud of that. Yeah. And then folks who want to raise venture financing, and you made that leap. You crossed that chasm. So what led to that, and what was it like being bootstrapped for so long? How has that impacted the business to today?
Yeah, totally. I think, it's really interesting. There's this idea of being super indie and bootstrapped, and then the complete opposite ends. I see it as a spectrum, and it's like the right time. We never really we never built this business, created this business to go raise venture funding. It was very much a side hustle, a solution to a problem we had in the agency and for our clients, and we built it as a really product-focused solution to a problem that our clients and us were having.
How long was it bootstrapped for?
For 3 years. Yeah, I think so. It was a big part of it. Was a side hustle and worked on it within the agency, right? For many years. It was 3 million users before we had a full-time employee on it, and that was 2019. So you're seeing the numbers we're seeing now. We really only focused on it for 2 years. Obviously, we had a lot of focus on it, but in terms of really building a scaled team, we had 9 people this time last year. We're now over 80, close to 90, and it's obviously a very significant step towards where we can take Linktree to our vision. I think if I were to do this again, I would do the exact same thing. I think being bootstrapped enabled us to build the product in the exact way we wanted to build it. It enabled us to be slow and considered with it. We weren't trying to make it anything it wasn't. We allowed it to build the reputation it had, listen to our users and build it with sustainability rather than this kind of giant hockey stick from the very start, and build this brand presence that now Linktree is synonymous with ease, and people see a Linktree and they trust clicking on it. And when you land in a Linktree, you know where you are and you're in a safe place. And that's what we've really tried to build for a long time. The reason we decided to go raise was because we realized we had that moment where we're like, all right, well, this is continuing to grow. We have a lot more work to do on it. We're in little old Melbourne, and 99.7% of our users are outside of Australia. And this has a shot at being an incredibly massive company, and we need the right people around the table with us to help us grow. And it really was about bringing people on and bringing in some capital that enabled us to really pour fuel in the fire in terms of growth and hiring people more rapidly to be able to build the product. Over 70% of our signups are still self-referred and organic from our own platform. We didn't spend a cent on paid advertising until we were early last year, I think it was, a few years in, basically, and we're running a digital agency. That's all we did was paid advertising for our clients. and we still made sure it was just hyper-focused on organic growth and product-led growth. And so the idea of capital raising wasn't about being able to go do huge, giant paid spends. It was really about being able to grow a bigger team faster and have the right people around the table to be able to reach our vision quicker. We knew we could do this over 10 years. We want to do it over 3. And that was the catalyst. And I'm so glad we did it. Like, it was a fascinating, even just the caliber of people we got to talk to ourselves, and just like investors and amazing people in the industry that we probably wouldn't have been exposed to.
When you went out to raise that first round of venture last summer, what were the reactions like? Did people know what a link in bio was when you said that you were, building this thing that helped aggregate all of their like online presences and helped drive audiences from one place to another? I'm curious what the broad venture capitalist response was to that.
So we, over the years, had pretty significant interest from VC, and I didn't really understand VC, to be completely honest. It was like, to me, I grew up in a small business. My parents had a small business. We built this agency entirely bootstrapped. We didn't even take a bank loan, from 0 to 60 employees in 3 years. Every single cent we ever made just went straight back into the business. And that's just what made sense. You just have to be profitable. And so this idea of just like bringing on capital and not being profitable was just like pretty foreign to me. And so we consistently just said, no, we're just going to continue doing what we're doing. I think when we really kind of realized that, hey, this is probably something we should do, we should just at least go explore it. When I basically just went to every VC that had already reached out, which was 30 or 40 of them, and they were the only ones we went and spoke to. So they understood it, they knew what it was, they were seeing the increase in traffic and understood the value of it. I don't think they really understood the complete vision and direction and the potential for the massive scale of growth that we're seeing now. But yeah, there was some kind of obviously questions around the sustainability of it, which I think evolved pretty quickly over the following months, recognizing its growth and its necessity. Yeah, it was interesting watching it evolve, and people really started to recognize, like, when a lot of like social movements started happening as well, the Black Lives Matters and Linktree being a central location and a place that enabled tens of thousands of people to be able to share their message in a free way really rapidly. That was incredibly humbling to us, and really awesome that we could enable that. I think there was quite a few kind of social movements like that ended up happening, and growth through COVID that happened. And I think a lot of investors started to recognize the future potential and understand the vision. Yeah, interesting times.
It's fascinating to me because I think a lot of founders approach it like, what's a really big story that would be exciting to a VC so that we can raise money, so that we can get started and get going? And then there's the other set of founders, which we talked about, the like bootstrap people that are like, what can we do that'll like earn a profit from day one so that we can keep running this thing, and we're never going to take investment, and because like we don't like that. And it feels like for Linktree, it was like neither of those approaches. I'm actually curious, like from day one, did you have the paid version of it, or did that not come till later where users could buy premium functionality?
It didn't come till later. And like, yeah, I was going to say as well, we would just like solve the problem for the user and we'll figure out what happens later. It wasn't this, we need an idea we can pitch to VCs, and it wasn't this, we need this idea that we can make income. We had the agency was scaling incredibly quickly. We were working 18-hour days just trying to keep that thing alive, let alone like needing to build this other thing to make money. It was really this idea of just solving a user's problem. And as it evolved and actually turns out many more people have that problem, we started to understand how we could continue to service these users and understand how we continue to solve their problems. And a lot of those problems ended up being things that would probably cost us too much money to solve. And we needed more people, and it continued to grow from there. So we realized that we could monetize it in that way. And again, continue to it was just like naturally and sustainably evolving.
Totally. So it sounds like it was the fact that it grew out of an agency was critical for the unique formula of Linktree, because in order to not need to raise money for it immediately, it needed to be attached to something that was generating revenue. But yeah, it's interesting, right? It's just there's very unique circumstances that can cause the exact right product with the right business model, or focused on free, focused on just growing users, focused on solving a problem, not overly focused on something that sounds like whatever, some pitch for VCs that a VC is going to get really excited about on day zero before there's any like proof or whatever. It sounds like there's a lot of elements of it. I'm curious, what was it like? Is the agency still going? How did you shift from, because I'm guessing your focus just gradually got eaten up by Linktree, right?
Yeah.
So what has that whole process been like for you?
Bolster, the agency is our baby. We started it. I grew up around music. It was this passion and this kind of, it really built the stepping stones for us and the knowledge we have that's all gone into Linktree. I think, it's really interesting. I've been asked this question lately around like how did an agency kind of influence the way we built Linktree. And I think for us, it's about having an agency where you're so close to work with clients. All you need to do is solve a client's problem. And it's exactly the same with the product. All you need to do is solve this user's problem, and really thinking about it that way. And then obviously all the expertise from a digital perspective and how performance works and how conversion works and all those ideas coming into it. And obviously having an agency where we could utilize resources internally to be able to continue building this. But mostly Nick, my co-founder, he designed the entire thing. And Mike, who was the engineer, still works with us today. He was in the agency. Yeah, we continue to think about it in the idea of how do we solve this user problem. The agency does still exist. It's thriving. It obviously got hit pretty hard in COVID because it's entirely focused on music, and every festival cancelled and every event cancelled. I mean, it was pretty interesting times, obviously, last year with the team needing to do work around sustaining that business and making sure we're looking after the people in that business and helping everything. And the Australian government did an amazing job in providing help there, but it was obviously problematic from a revenue perspective. And then Linktree doing the complete opposite and scaling pretty rapidly. So it's a very interesting time seeing kind of both ends of the spectrum and a lot of deep learnings. But Bolster is doing amazingly well. Now a lot of music starting to come back in Australia, and we continue to focus on, that team's continuing to focus on it. I was weaning out of Bolster slowly over the last few years. And then as of the start of last year, when we really went out to raise, I obviously went all in on Linktree. I wouldn't expect any investor to give us money if we weren't all in on it. And so all three founders are really focused on it, which is, super exciting times. When we first started talking to VCs, the idea of like really understanding the vision and how far this could go was interesting. But with Airtree and Insight, the reason we really ended up choosing them was that they saw it immediately. Airtree were incredibly in working with us at the start and recognizing it and really understanding that, hey, we're going to need a US investor for us to solve the problem of needing a bigger team outside of Australia. And they supported us and stood by us and helped us find the lead investor. They knew from the start that they were all in, and I really appreciated that, obviously. And Insight, the team there, recognizing it very quickly and moving very quickly. And so I think the conviction around that, and we're obviously really proud to have them on the team. And I think, obviously the continued interest from there has been super humbling.
We wanted to end with a question that we ask every guest, which is, if you weren't building Linktree, if you didn't have your current job, if Linktree did not exist, and you were a participant in the passion economy, what would you be doing?
Is this like a superpower question, like I could do anything, or is it like, do I need to have my current skill set?
I would be curious to hear the aspirational, even if you didn't have the skill set in actuality, what would your dream creator profession be?
Very good question. I feel like I would want to be a teacher, lecturer of some kind.
Oh, I invested in a business that can turn you into one on the side.
Ooh, great.
It's called Maven.
Awesome.
Plug for Maven.
I was going to say like rock star in music or something. I grew up in music, and I always wanted, I don't think I would want to be that. I always wanted to sink into the background and be in the business of music, not on stage.
Right.
But I think in terms of, I love helping people as well. I was a music manager. I love helping careers. It definitely those values come through in Linktree. And I think the idea of being able to impart knowledge or any kind of knowledge that I may have and be able to help people. So, I don't know.
That's a great one. Teacher is great. And here's the recent learning that I've had from being one of the founding instructors on Maven and teaching my course about the creator economy recently. I think teachers are about to realize that teaching online is financially so lucrative versus having a traditional teaching job offline.
Yeah.
Because people are used to paying so much for education. If you go to business school, if you go to a US undergrad college, like the amount that you're paying for that education is staggering. But teachers are seeing very little of that. So with the internet and going direct to your students, teachers can make a ton of money.
Yeah. And I think it's the perfect premise of the passion economy, right? Like people that actually have
Yes.
these skills and seeing the money directly is
Like,
incredible.
as long as you're good at something really niche and there's a passionate base of people who also are really interested in that niche, like you can make a healthy living.
I think it's also fast. Like it's not just teachers, but it's also people that have expertise in a field recognizing they can do that. And it's a lot of work to put a course together, right? Or a lot of work to put a deck together to impart knowledge on people. But the act of doing that synthesizes your knowledge so much. It really makes you realize your gaps in the knowledge, or realize how much you actually do understand this topic. And every time I actually put the effort into doing that, you come out the other side just being able to talk about it more succinctly, understand your knowledge of it, which I think is an awesome exercise to do regardless.
Yeah, exactly. No, I didn't fully realize this before doing my course. The process of building a course and teaching it actually makes the teacher so much smarter, because you have to think about the content and push it forward and explain it and come up with new ways to make it accessible for people. And you have insights in the process of building that content, and you understand things much better too.
It's like that concept of you don't understand it until you can explain it to your grandma.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally.
Absolutely.
What course would you teach?
Oh.
And also, it doesn't have to be something that you currently know a lot about. Maybe it could be something that you would want to learn about, and then you would teach it. It can be anything.
Metaphysics and like space astrophysics.
Oh, that is fascinating.
I'm obsessed.
Love it.
I love science. So I if I weren't doing this, I would probably be like, if I were to have to go back to college or anything, I would be doing like behavioral psychology or astrophysics or something like that. That's generally like the stuff I'll read about outside of business.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here today and for getting us up to speed on Linktree. Congrats on the recent fundraise. Really exciting stuff ahead. And yeah, we're going to be watching with lots of excitement to see the new developments down the line and continue to just be so impressed with the growth. So congratulations on everything, and really appreciate your spending the time with us.
Thanks so much, Lee and Nathan. Yeah, really great to be here, and I appreciate all your support.